Hi everyone, Aidan here with etrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Hollywood Rack's Destination 4-bike rack on the back of our 2022 Ford Maverick. This is a platform style bike rack that holds the bike in these trays and by our frame. We've got a cradle with a strap run around the frame to keep it upright, as well as two straps on the bottom to help hold it down and in place. It does make frame contact, so carbon frame isn't going to be the best option for this bike rack. With it though, these cradles do slide up and down independently from each other and rotate 360 degrees. So any sort of alternative frame bikes are going to be just fine on here. The other thing we want to keep in mind is the 35-pound weight capacity per bike. We do want to stay within that limit, so e-bikes aren't the best option for this bike rack. Other than that though, I am a pretty big fan of it just because for a 4-bike rack and a platform rack, it's a pretty accessible price point. With this, it's fairly easy to use, but there are a lot of touch points, and it doesn't have as many features as you might want to find in a bike rack, like tilting. So if we want to get access to the back of our vehicle, we need to get the bike unloaded because there isn't any tilt feature. Get the straps on the wheels undone first, pressing the gray button on the side and undoing those straps. And then the strap around the frame is pretty much the exact same, but we do want to be mindful that without that in place, the bike could tip over, so just keep an arm around it so that it doesn't tip into the vehicle. Once that's undone, you can lift it up and over. That center mass does present a bit of an obstacle, making it hard to lift the bike up and over, but it's really only super difficult on that innermost cradle because it's just more that you have to reach over. These outside bikes are going to be a lot easier to load and unload. I always like to replace these straps when I'm done and fold down the center mass by undoing this hand knob, flipping the plate that it's pinching down backwards, and this can go to either side. Once it's down, you can use the cradle and the strap around that cradle to actually wrap around the tray and hold it in place. So as I tighten that down, you can see that's going to keep it down and still. Now with this, I don't think it's going to have any sort of clearance with the tailgate. You can see it will make contact with the bike rack. At this point though, it's just plastic touching plastic, so I wouldn't be too concerned about it, but I definitely wouldn't put weight on this. You're not going to have a place to sit and change your shoes before or after a ride on the tailgate here. Some measurements to check out are going to be our ground clearance. We'll go to the back end and the lowest point, and right there it's going to be exactly 22 inches from the ground to the bottom point here. I think that should be just fine for ground clearance. There's a good rise in the shank, so I don't think you have to worry about it. For our distance added to the back, the outermost point on the vehicle to the outermost point on the rack is 40.5 inches, so it does stick out a fair bit. We can save some of that space though by folding it up. So if we want to leave this in the hitch between rides, we can. Just remove the pin and clip from the pivot point here. The pin is threaded, so undo that using the large hand knob on the other side. Fold it upright, reinsert and thread it in with the newly aligned holes, and then we can secure it with the clip on the other side. I like that it's threaded because that actually stabilizes that pivot point quite a bit and keeps things from moving around as much. And from here, that new distance, it's only going to be sticking out 13.5 inches. So if you do leave this in the hitch between rides, it's a lot more manageable for things like parking spaces or maybe even your garage at home. The closest point to the vehicle, I'd say, is probably, again, the bumper to this plate right here, which is 6 inches. Plenty of room there, and I don't think that'll be a point of concern. It is working with our 2-inch by 2-inch receiver tube and secures with a locking anti-rattle bolt that does do a really good job of getting all that shake and play out of the hitch. And it's nice that it's locking too. The installation process is pretty straightforward because this bike rack isn't super heavy, so it's really easy to get it in the hitch, and all you got to do is insert that anti-rattle bolt and tighten it down with a 3/4 inch socket. And aside from that, I think it's a pretty solid bike rack. For me, I'd maybe look into a hanging rack if you don't need the platform rack just because it takes up a little less space in the garage and it's probably going to be a lot more easy to manage. Something like the Kurt Premium is a favorite of mine because it's pretty accommodating to kids' bikes. But other than that, that'll do it for our look at the Hollywood Rack's Destination 4-bike rack. Thanks for watching.
Now we're going to go ahead and take it on our test course. First we'll start with the slaloms. This is going to show the side-to-side action. It's kind of going to mimic the movements that you'll see whenever you're driving down the road normally. Now we'll have the alternating speed bumps. This is going to be more so like the uneven roads and some of that uneven terrain you might be traveling on, and see how it holds up.